And they said, how would you like to interview Mae West? I said, okay, is she still alive? And they said, yeah. I said, well, how do I find her? And they said, how the hell do we know? You're the one out in Hollywood.
Now we're going to continue our conversation with Larry Grobel. Let's see what he has to say today. I know you've written about some of this, but for the viewers who don't know out there, how exactly did you become a journalist in this way? And who was your first interview with?
I was 15 years old, and I won an American history essay contest that Newsday in New York sponsored. And the topic was America's three greatest presidents. And I won that, and so did another young lady that from another school. We got to have our pictures in the newspaper. They published the essay. There were 16 of us. There were 8 contests, and so over 8 months. And at the end of the year, we all went to Washington, D.C., and we were supposed to meet President Kennedy, which was quite something. Kennedy that weekend went to Berlin, and he gave his famous speech. We didn't meet Kennedy, but we met Bobby Kennedy. He was Attorney General, and we went into his office, and we got to talk to him, and he gave us these little PT 109 pins and tie clips from his brother's campaign. And then we met the head of the FBI, and we met our senators, and it was quite something. So I saw at the age of 15 that writing paid, not necessarily in money, but in attention, and the people in my school treated me differently after that. It was a very interesting and unique experience. I always knew I wanted to be a writer, and I was the editor of my school newspaper. And when I went to college at UCLA, I became I wrote a column for 4 years in the newspaper, and I edited the UCLA magazine, satirical magazine called Seder. I marched in the Mississippi Meredith March, and I reported it on Newsday. So I was writing. I was becoming a writer, basically. I went to Ghana in the Peace Corps. I met a sculptor named Vincent Kofi, and he was a very interesting sculptor, and he's the one who gave me the title for my latest book called Turquoise, because I asked him, what is truth in art to you? And he said, truth is like the color turquoise. It changes under different light. Under artificial light, it's one color. Under natural sunlight, it's a different color. And I thought that's really fascinating, because that's exactly a title for me. What is my truth about living in Africa for 3 years? It's my truth, but it's not a Ghanaian's truth, because anything I have to say about Ghana is not going to make sense to them, because it's I haven't been there long enough. That interview was published in African Arts Magazine, and in a certain way, that would have been my first interview. When I came back to the States after 3 years in Ghana and 1 year traveling around the world, I got back and I called Newsday because I was looking for work, and I said, hey, I've been gone for 4 years, and I think I could write for you. And they were just coming out with a new magazine called LI Magazine, Long Island Magazine, and it was like Parade. It was a Sunday insert. Basically, for the next 6 or 8 months, I stayed in New York, and I wrote for that magazine, and it was all kinds of new journalism stuff. It was a lot of fun. I wrote about people whose hobby was collecting fish, or people who was in the demolition derby, going around the derby crashing into each other, or the Roosevelt Raceway story, and where the trotters were racing, and I got to meet the jockeys and the drivers, and I got in the cars, and I jumped out of airplanes, to write about that, and all sorts of things that I was writing about. And then I said, I want to just work on my fiction. So I want to go. I was going to move to. A friend of mine became the director of Antioch College West. He called me. He said, "Would you become my assistant director?" I said, "No, I'm not looking for a job. I want to write, but okay, I'll do it half time." So I came out here to LA to work on that. And as soon as I got an apartment and a telephone, the phone rang. It was amazing. It's like the next day after the phone was installed, and it was the editor from Newsday that I worked for. And he said, we figured out a way to get off Long Island. So all the articles at the time were based on Long Island. And I said, what is it? And he says, we want to do interviews with household names. I said, okay. And they said, how would you like to interview Mae West? I said, okay. Is she still alive? And they said, yeah. I said, well, how do I find her? And they said, how the hell do we know? You're the one out in Hollywood. And that was it. That was the beginning. So I called around. I looked into. I found out she had done this movie, Myra Breckenridge. Paramount Pictures was still involved with her. So they got me in touch with Mae West. Mae West agreed to see me. I put on a tie and jacket, the only time I ever wore a tie and jacket in all the interviews I've done since, but I got dressed up for her. I went to a flower shop that was near her apartment to bring her flowers. And I went to buy these flowers. And I said, oh, and the guy says to me, oh, must be a honey, real nice, your girlfriend or something. I said, no, I'm going to interview Mae West. Oh, she doesn't like these flowers. She likes these, the tulips or something, the most expensive flower, right? I said, okay, give me those. So I got those and I went to see Mae West. First thing she did when she came out was look in horror at my tape recorder and said, oh, no, you can't use that. I said, well, why not? She said, well, someone interviewed me once and they made a record out of my voice and I don't want that to happen. And, this is really my first celebrity interview. The other one with the artist was the first real interview that I did with someone. But so I said, look, I'll sign something. But no, she wouldn't let me do it. So I did my first celebrity interview without a tape recorder and she talked very slow. So I was able to really scribble down enough those, and I went home and worked on that. Newsday ended up really liking it, and they said, "Well, and I said, can I do any household names?" He says, "Who do you have in mind?" And I said, "How about Linus Pauling? How about Ray Bradbury? How about J.P. Donlevy?" I wasn't thinking in terms of celebrities. I was thinking of writers and scientists, and they said okay to those. But that ran out very quickly. And a household name is usually someone on television or someone in the movies. Those are your most famous people. So I ended up doing Warren Beatty, Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, Gabe Kaplan. He was Welcome Back, Kotter. That's how far back this goes. I did Cher. I did Barbra Streisand was one of those. I did those interviews for a number of years. And then as I was doing them, I said, there's something about this form. There's something about interviewing people that is very interesting because it allows you, it gives you permission to ask somebody any question you want. And if they don't want to answer it, they don't have to, but they won't punch you in the face or kick you out if you ask them because they're there to be interviewed. So I wanted to see, after doing all these interviews that were about 2 to 3 hours long, I wondered what would it be like to talk to somebody for 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 weeks, for a month. How good could I do it? How long can I keep asking questions? How deep can I probe a person's personality? That led to, I did Dolly Parton then, I did Henry Winkler then, I did Luciano Pavarotti. I went to Tahiti. I spent 10 days on Brando's Island. Came back here, worked on it. He wanted to come talk to me about something John Wayne had said about the Indians. So he came to my house. I didn't know he was going to come to my house. I thought I was going to his house and he ended up coming here. And so I had to take down my bulletin board of all Brando stuff. I'm pulling it off, like this. My wife wasn't home. She was teaching at Cal State Long Beach. So, I had to clean up as much as I could by myself and take the dirty dishes and throw them under the cabinet because I didn't have time to wash because he was on his way, right? And so, and then he came and he spent 5 hours at my house. Then he left. And that's what happened is that after that interview with Brando, Streisand was big, and I got on the cover of Writer's Digest because of the Streisand one. They put me on the cover, but it was the Brando interview that really changed things because everybody in Hollywood agreed to talk to me because I became the guy who did Brando, and that's Pacino was next, and Pacino had never done an interview before, and he was doing Cruising, and Author had just come out, and he just said. When he agreed, he says, okay, I'll do the interview, but I'll only do it with the guy who did Brando because he loved that interview with Marlon and he carried it around with him. He used to carry the nut. He ripped it out of the magazine and he would read it all the time. And he told me this, when I met him. And so, and he, every time he would ask me, give me another copy of the Brando interview because he would always lose it. So finally, when I put the book out on Brando, I was able to give him the book instead, so he didn't lose it as easily. But that's who I became, the guy who did Brando. So Lily Tomlin would be interested. Barbra Streisand, I would meet her at Elliot Gould's house on a Christmas event or something. And she just came right up to me and tell me about Marlon. And we went into the kitchen and we talked about Marlon Brando for half an hour. So, I realized that my life has changed a bit and I've now entered into a different echelon of interviewer, so to speak. And then I was just, I was able to keep doing it. And I turned down some people. I turned down Clint Eastwood. I turned down Paul Newman, because I was so busy doing things, so, but, in the end, no complaints, I mean, it's been a very enriching experience to do all these things.
Thank you for watching the Burbank International Film Festival's Real Conversations. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And learn everything you need to know about the festival at burbankfilmfest.org.